This is kind of an overview of what I've done to a Daytona 675, turning it into a naked sport bike, street fighter, cafe racer, whatever you want to call it. And it was basically a wrecked bike I bought salvage, basically with just cockpit damage. Fender, as you can see, has been replaced. And so I eliminated all the plastic bodywork and put on an 8-inch headlight, LED headlight, obviously a factory Fender, wrong color. But a lot of people have asked questions I've seen on forums about, how to do this particular project, and I thought I'd give an overview of what I did. Now I have it all apart right now because I'm replacing the air filter, and I thought I'd just go ahead and kind of start at square one and at least point out kind of the highlights of what I did and how maybe it can help you do your project, or if you're deciding to do one, how you might go about it. It really wasn't that hard. Well, it wasn't hard at all. It was just a matter of deciding what I wanted to do and then getting there. So, but I started out, and I'll put a picture of where I started from. So there was no chassis damage, there was no engine damage. As you can see, the cases are intact, everything. This thing actually, you could run it, it ran and you could drive it when I bought it. So, I've got kind of the best case scenario here. But you know what, there's enough of these out there riding around and falling over that people will probably be coming across these. So anyhow, one of the first things you got to do for when doing this project is figure out where you're going to put the wiring, because a lot of the wiring and the fuses, I guess, and some of the relays and everything, they're all on a panel that's mounted up in around the instrument cluster, which is no longer there, and up in the fairing. It'd be up in this area up here, okay, which obviously is no longer there. So where do you run that stuff? Well, after careful consideration, I figured that, well, here would be the best place. As you can see, I built a little shelf to mount what was left of the panel on. Okay, so and then here I'll show you where I ran the wiring. I ran the wiring through the air intake. Normally there's a snorkel right here coming off. Right. Anyway, it's kind of hard to do with this camera here. Okay, like this. There's an opening. Anyway, and that supports your instrument cluster and your headlights and everything. So it's kind of a crucial piece. So without that, you don't have much. So what I decided is that I could eliminate the snorkel, and then basically I can run the wiring through that opening. See that opening in the frame actually is part of the air intake, okay? So I ran my wiring through there, and then I mounted I'll show this in a little bit. Probably when I'm going to kind of reassemble this during the video, or in this chain here, and I'll kind of show you where I put things. But I put basically resistors for the bar end, turn signals. The tip over switch is mounted in the headlight. Okay, I made some brackets, and the barometric pressure sensor is also mounted in there on brackets. Okay, so this is it was all straightforward. Nothing, no hard. There was no machining involved. It was just a matter of bending and drilling metal brackets and things. So if you're at all handy, this project is easy to do. Okay, so anyway, the aftermarket parts that I bought are these headlight brackets. Okay, as you can see, I bought the headlight. It's an LED headlight. There's the actual light itself. There's no depth to it, so there's plenty of room inside the bucket. Okay, and that's the reason I chose this bucket and this headlight, was because of all that room you could stick stuff in. Okay, anyway, so what did I do? Since on this side the air intake comes through this area to go into your air box. Okay, see if the light will show what I did. Anyway, so as you can see, there were actually, I wish I had a before picture here, but I cut off the snorkel essentially. There was a snout that came off this and ran forward, okay, up this direction, okay? And I cut that off. And what that does is that allows room for the bracket that I made to hold the wiring, but also it allows air to get into the air filter, okay? And there's plenty of room. I've driven the bike. It runs just fine without the snorkel and that air intake. There's no flat spots, dead spots, nothing. It runs great, okay? So don't fear that without the snorkel, without the flapper, the vacuum operated flapper, that it's going to change the way the bike runs. If it does, it's not noticeable to me. It runs, like I said, it runs great. Anyway, so I'm going to put a new air filter in this thing. As you can see, I bought one. And then as I reassemble this thing, I will add to this video. But before I do that, I want to point out how I did this bracket. This little shelf that I made, I should say, the shelf that I made uses, I don't know if you can see this, but uses the original brackets that actually stuck out to the side of the frames, or the frame here, on each side, and it was basically where your plastic, your fairing popped into. It had little studs that popped into these rubber donuts. Anyway, so what I did is I cut off metal and made essentially, I basically took off the bracket and just kept the strap that bolts to the frame on each side, okay? And what I did is then I made my own piece to add to that to create this shelf. I can, hopefully you can kind of see what I did. But anyway, what was good about that is because the frame is at an angle and these brackets are at an angle, it was great to be able to reuse them because it was a kind of a complicated piece. It would be a complicated piece to make. So what I did is I just used regular pop rivets you can find at the hardware store to hold the pieces together. And anyway, so you can see that you can see what I did. And this has worked out great. I've got enough wiring slack to run through to come out here, and as you can see, I wrapped all the wiring with whatever this stuff's called, I forget. Anyway, you can see what it is. So, and then as you can see, I put Adel clamps to secure the wiring using the holes that were already here that held on the snorkel. All right. What else can I point out? Anyway, the only splicing I had to do was the headlight, because I had to put on a different connector for the headlight. So get out your wiring diagram. It's real easy. And I think you're thinking, how did I get the wiring through there? Did I have to cut a bunch of stuff? I didn't. Most of the connectors actually fit through the hole here. Okay, you could push them through, and they didn't break or anything. Okay, I think there was at least one that I did have to basically cut and reconnect. Okay, cut off the connector and then reconnect it. And I'm trying to remember which one it was. But anyway, it wasn't a big deal. You'll know when you get to it. As far as taking apart the harness, I'm not going to retroactively do that. But as far as I peeled back the wiring in one instance so that I could get more slack to run through here and have enough lengths to reach what I want, to reach the place that I wanted to go. So, so it looked messy, but it wasn't. I wish I could remember what circuits. There was a ground that I ended up extending between two I don't know, what do you call these things? Two bundles, and so that I could get more slack and bring it through, and there was enough room. But I think anybody with basic ability can do the job. I did use crimp connectors. I did not solder. I don't know. People want to argue whether crimping or soldering. I used high quality crimps that I bought at Radio Shack. They have built-in heat shrink, and they work great. They're stable. They're not how can I say it, bulky. So I went with those. They've been working fine. And I've got a few, I don't know, 1,000 miles on the bike, and I hadn't had a problem. So anyway, let's see. So I'm going to reassemble and then come back and then give you an update on what I did and kind of show you how things went. So hopefully that hasn't bored you. And here we go.